give yourself time to make the most of your visual elements. Of course, one of the reactions might be, well, we don't really have that much time. So how do you deal with that reality, Brian?
I think you have to plan ahead, and it's so hard sometimes. But you have to set up your interviews in advance. You have to know the angle of the story, and that's something you could work with your news director with before you leave the station. But you have to be familiar with your story before you leave, and you just have to be prepared. And it does make all the difference in the world. I mean, when you have your interview set up and you know the slant of the story and what you're going to be talking about, that does free up some time. And I think just too often enough, especially when MMJs are concerned, we're all about just getting the sound that we need and getting the shots that we need and then getting back to the station because we have to edit and write. I always try to allow myself at least 20 minutes just to do the stand-up. It doesn't take much. It's just a matter of planning ahead. That's basically it. Just give yourself time. Make sure you have everything in order, and that frees up some time later on just so you can go and be more creative.
When my colleagues Regent Dukas and Galen Culver teach MMJs around the country, we recommend you outline the story, especially what is going to be your opening shot, because it's so important. What is going to be your closing shots? What will your most memorable moment in the story be? And fourth, if you're asking a question, what is that question going to be? How could that question be the question that everybody wants answered? And we find if you can outline your first shot, last shot, memorable moment, and question. Now, things change in the field. We got to be real about it. However, if you go in with a vision, you're in a much better position, Ryan, to turn a better story.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Let's go to your third point.
Okay.
Instead of relying on graphics for facts and figures, use real people.
Yeah, I mean, I find this is helpful often in stand-ups as well, is instead of just rattling off graphics or facts, and I think that's often, I mean, they're useful in stand-up sometimes too, especially when you don't have video to go along with what you're talking about. But also, just introduce like a human component to what you're talking about. Like, Bob's house isn't the only one that's been hit by graffiti this week. 3 of his neighbors have also been tagged. Like something like that. Just mentioning the person that you interviewed and to create a more human side in your story, so that you're not just the talking head, the voice of God rattling off these numbers. You're humanizing yourself, and I think people are more inclined to watch when you do that.
Now that raises a frequent question we get, and I've created many learning videos on it. Well, I can't find a person quickly, so I've got a problem. What has been your best approach to put a face on a story?
Well, I think it's always important to conduct your interview first. There's always somebody around. I mean, you just have to look. There's always somebody around. A few weeks ago, I did a story from a town near here. I was looking. It was a gang story, and people were afraid of retaliation. I spent an hour looking for somebody, but there's always somebody. You just have to look hard enough. So I don't buy that we just can't find somebody. That's your job, is to go up to people and just talk to them and make them feel comfortable. I think it's important also that you do your interviews first and then you do the stand-up. You should never do the stand-up first and then, because you never know, you might do the stand-up first and then you go to the interview and they say something totally different. So it's really important for you to conduct those interviews first, get the information you need, get what people are saying in the field, in real life, and then relate that to what you're going to say as a reporter.
Building on that, what some stations are doing, because they can't find a real person to tell a story. They can do a man on the street, they can get people's opinions, but a number of stations, and you need to check with your news director about this, are saying, we've covered a number of angles on this story, but if you know somebody who's been unemployed and no longer getting unemployment, we want to make sure we get that side of the story too. Please contact us. So without sounding weak, without sounding like we can't do our job, they're positioning this from the standpoint, if you know somebody in a situation like this, or you are, we want to make sure we're giving viewers the complete story, and we want to hear from you. And as a result, they're getting names and addresses of people whose homes may be foreclosed on, people who have just landed a job, people that have received, have gotten jobs because of the stimulus money, and there's just a wealth of people out there through their social networks they're also finding. Has anybody done that at one of your stations, and has it worked? If not, it's something to consider, and obviously your news director has to sign off on it, and it has to be crafted in a way that it doesn't suggest, we can't find anybody for this story, we need your help. That might be going a little too far. Okay. David,
Bob, it's Robin. Hey, I'm news director at Keeper and KIMA with Ryan, for those of you. We do that now regularly in our broadcast, and it's about seeing that we're balanced and that we're telling all sides of the story. And I'm not in the same room as Ryan, but Ryan, didn't that happen with one of your stories too, about like the firefighters, and somebody worked off of us saying, did we not tell all sides? And he right away emailed in and said, you know, you missed this side, and so we had a whole other story.
Yeah, we do that. We oftentimes will, especially if it's, I don't want to say controversial, but if it's a story that we know we'll be hearing about from viewers at home, and they're angry or frustrated over it, we'll often say, well, if we've missed some kind of viewpoint, if you think that we've missed something in this story, let us know. We're dedicated to covering all sides here, and people take us up on that. And Robin was just mentioning a story that I did about firefighters. Basically, there was an agreement with a fire department near here, and that agreement broke down, and so they were relying all on volunteer firefighters instead of paid firefighters. And I did the story about it, how emergency response times were going to triple because of that. And there was another side to the story, apparently, that I failed to mention, and we did mention at the end of that story that you know, if we've missed something, give us a call. We're equal. We're dedicated to providing an equal picture here, and I think people at home appreciate that because they have a say. That they know that we're not just going out and, you know, just reporting what we want to report. We're dedicated to going out and getting the real truth here, and so yeah, that does go along with what you're talking about, Bob.
Yeah. We find in focus groups when we test real people, they score, they engage people perfectly high, like at a 9 or a 10. But when it's a man on the street or a person on the street simply giving their opinion, viewers say, well, I don't care. Their opinion is not worth any more than mine. So the downside of just grabbing people and asking their comment is they don't have a stake in the issue. And what you, Robin, and your team are doing are finding people that are directly affected by an issue. If you're doing a story about a dangerous intersection, it's a difference between grabbing somebody walking down the street versus interviewing a person who lost a loved one in an accident at that intersection. And many MMJs will say, well, Kaplitz, get real. There's no way I can find that person. But with the approach Robin and several stations are taking, that's a way to do it. And it speaks to the complete story. And nobody will fault you for wanting all angles and human angles to get the complete story. Any other points or questions? That's a very powerful approach because so many of the stories that punch through are based on this real person concept. And we're all sick of hearing, put a face on your story, have a real person. But by using your social media and even on the air, you're able to land most of those stories.